I have a fear of elevators. It isn't what you think, though. I'm not afraid of them breaking and falling to the bottom, and I'm not afraid of the confined space. I'm not even afraid of heights. I'm afraid of going into an elevator and never coming out. Let me explain. I had this friend, Travis. Nice guy, a little mischievous. We grew up together. We were like brothers. He had a solid frame, a sharp nose and chin, and a birthmark over his left eye. He always joked that it was his tribal tattoo, since he was a quarter Native American. When we were in our 20s, Travis lived in this old rundown apartment complex that contained an equally rundown elevator. One night we were out drinking, and I decided to just crash at his place since it was closer to town. We got a little too wasted. I ended up falling asleep on the couch in the lobby of the building, and he went into the elevator to go up to his apartment because he, as he described it back then, had to yak. But I never saw him again. He never made it to his apartment. I don't even believe he made it out of the elevator. They launched an investigation into his disappearance. I was questioned, but I understood why. I was the last one to see him. The last blurry image of him I remember were the doors closing behind him in that elevator. There were never any conclusive answers as to what happened. That was a little over a year ago, and I've had a fear of elevators ever since. I saw something the other day, though, that made me pause. It was something I couldn't explain, and maybe I don't want to. It was a couple with a baby. A baby with sharp features and a birthmark over his left eye. Ella lived alone. She was a talented piano player who frequently performed in front of large audiences. When she was by herself, however, she would often just play and play to relax and wind down. She had recently purchased a vintage piano from an auction and had it tuned and refinished. It looked lovely in her home. She sat down to play, her fingers almost floating above the keys. She closed her eyes and the music filled the air. After a few moments, she paused to take a break and lifted her fingers off the keys. From the other room, she thought she heard the faint sound of clapping. She quickly got up and went to the other room and turned on the light. Nothing. Assuming she was simply hearing things, maybe her brain was so wired to hear clapping after a performance that her ears were playing tricks. She sat back down to play. Once again, she paused. And once again, she heard clapping, this time closer, as if it was coming from the opposite side of the room. Her curiosity was getting the better of her. She turned around, played part of a piece, and then abruptly stopped. She let the silence hang for a moment, listening. But this time, no clapping. She exhaled with relief. Suddenly, from directly behind her, she heard a deep, unnatural voice.
"Bravo."
She turned around and screamed. I found a hard drive the other day. It was fairly small, but according to the label, it had 50 terabytes. Seemed almost impossible. It was smaller than my phone, and there were a bunch of connector ports on the side, some of which I didn't recognize. But there was one port that looked like it would fit with a cable that I had, so out of curiosity, I plugged it into my computer. I shooed my cat off the keyboard and started examining the contents of the hard drive. It was a humongous archive. There were folders from 1 all the way up to 5,000. It was overwhelming. I didn't even know which one to click on first. I randomly clicked on one and it looked like it was filled with some form of PDF file that I've never seen before. My PDF reader was able to open it though, and it was a news article about the destruction of the Hindenburg. Odd. But it didn't look like... well, it wasn't formatted like an old news article. It looked modern, or maybe even futuristic. Another folder contained an article documenting the destruction of Pompeii in the same futuristic format. Very odd. All of a sudden it clicked. The folder numbers corresponded to years. I clicked through the 2000s and every major tragedy and natural disaster was documented in the same format. The date, the time, number of casualties, everything. I clicked the current year. Same thing. Everything documented and recorded meticulously. And then I noticed there were articles dated ahead of the current day. Articles from the future. I clicked through them. A bridge collapse. A tsunami. A volcanic eruption. I clicked through the other folders. Years and years worth of information on every worldwide disaster and tragedy. I sat back in disbelief. This could be used to save millions of lives, prevent countless deaths. I knew I had to copy the information. I would store as much as I could on my computer, and then find a way to get this information out there. I highlighted the folders. And at that second, my cat jumped onto the keyboard, his paw landing squarely on the delete key. I sat there in disbelief, staring at my 50-terabyte hard drive, which now contains 0 files.